What's up, y'all? It's Jaleel Wavy, and I have a real special guest with me today. A very important conversation is about to happen right now. Spokesperson for R.Y.A, Leslie Rolfe. What made you want to take on this role and be like spokesperson, leader?
Right.
Was it a calling from higher power? Or
Right,
you just
right.
like, fuck it, I'm finna get out there and just take charge?
Well, I went out to the first event that they had on the 30th as just a participant in the event. I didn't have anything to do with the organization or the organizing the event. I wasn't, I didn't have any kind of formal role with the R.Y.A. I just was out there as, part of the community. And how things sort of descended on into the night and some of the aftermath that came with it. Once I seen that another event was taking place 2 days later, which ended up being on Tuesday, I just went and I did a few things that I could do to try to make contacts and get a connection with certain people. And I just got in connection with like-minded individuals, and we had some commonalities. And then from that point, I just sort of took the role of spokesperson, but it's still been a whole organization that was running before, that's still in the process of running, that's handling a lot of this stuff too.
So was this going on before all of this stuff happened, or this group just started when all the George Floyd stuff?
They had already an organization that was already built, that was already formed, I want to say in 2017, and they had different events that's happened in Rockford that they had put together protests and rallies and things for. But I think just because of the magnitude of the George Floyd thing and the moment in time that we were in is what just put maybe an extra set of eyes and an extra magnifying glass on what was going on.
When you decided to be the spokesperson, like what has the reception been, like the negative and the positive?
Well, I mean, since all of this stuff sort of really started occurring, I haven't really been on social media as much. I haven't really been taking the time out to look at comments or look at replies or shares to some of the posts. Even when I go through the R.Y.A Facebook page, I go to the inboxes, and that's really all I'm in there for. I don't really go through the comments just because it's not what I'm in the process of doing. It's not about me, so how somebody's receiving it don't really have nothing to do with me. All I can do is sort of just throw me off what my ultimate goal would be.
So has anybody reached out to you, like 100 Strong or like the Rockford NAACP? Has anybody tried, like older people that's been out here doing this for a while, have they reached out to y'all to try to help in any type of way?
We've had multiple people from different organizations come out and show support. It's been a few people who have reached out to the page and or have reached out to me, seeing me out there at the events, or maybe reached out to certain other people in the organization. But we're sort of at a place now where we're keeping most things in-house and most things isolated. But 100 Strong's been, a couple people from 100 Strong's been at a couple different events. We shouted out 100 Strong at one of the events that we did because they also had something going where they were, put a petition up with calling for Chief O'Shea to step down and resign from his job. I don't think that nothing formally has happened with the NAACP. I know that on the 30th, when the first initial protest happened, I know a couple of disparaging remarks came from the NAACP about the R.Y.A. I don't know if it was specifically just R.Y.A or if it was specifically about
like
the events. I think it was just all together. Yeah, it was just sort of some disparaging comments that came out. But as far as I know, that's sort of the extent of what's going on organizationally with some of these other organizations.
But even with the comments, did they even try to reach out to y'all and try to help?
I don't have anything on my end that's like that. I don't want to speak for every other person. There might be somebody else who maybe they did reach out to when that person decided that they wasn't as receptive to it. But just overall, it hasn't been any other organization that we've been in contact with that's conducive in putting these things together.
Mm-hmm. How many days do y'all do this a week? Because I'm not gonna lie, I've been working.
Right.
So I haven't been able to get to any.
Right.
But it seems like y'all been doing it on a weekly basis, days at a time.
Leading up to now, I think since the 30th, I think maybe we've done like maybe 10 or 11 or something like that. It's no like determined amount of days before in the week when the week comes up for it to be a certain amount of days in the week. Specifically for these last 2.5 weeks, it hasn't even really been a very big notice ahead of time, especially because of things like certain stores closing down and certain things like that happening. So we were trying to avoid stores closing down. So it's been sort of a late notice on some of the events. But with some of the things coming forward in the future, it'll be a bigger time span for people to know when it's going to be happening.
Can you talk about like some of the protests that y'all been doing? Because it's not just y'all just marching.
Right.
y'all been doing, like teaching people, having food and stuff
Yeah.
there. Like, can you talk about some of those?
Well, Saturday that just passed, we had the teaching, which a couple other members of the organization sort of took the forefront on putting that whole thing together. But we had people who brought in. We had a clothes drive. People brought clothes to donate. A lot of people came from around the area, the neighborhoods, or even further out to get free clothes. We had a free food giveaway. A lot of people brought non-perishable items, and people came out and got those. We had free food that was getting cooked, so even people that was just in the neighborhood or people in anywhere in the community could come out and eat for free. Had different people come up and speak. Had a couple people that did some poetry, a couple young people that came up there and performed a couple songs and things like that. And then we also took time out to play we played the Martin Luther King Jr. speech, I've Seen the Mountaintop. We had somebody who read a couple of excerpts from some abolitionist books and took some questions from people about some abolitionist concepts and defunding and demilitarizing and what those things will look like. So that was the main thing that we did Saturday. We had one protest a week back where we did like the overnight protest where we stayed Sunday night into Monday morning outside of the county jailhouse. So each time that we do it, we try to add a different element to it that maybe wasn't in one of the previous ones.
Yeah. So you mentioned defunding the police. Like, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? Because a lot of people are confused. I know when I first heard it, I was like, defunding, like, yo, I'm like taking money. Like, is that the right meaning? I was like confused. I'm like, funds is money. So can you just explain to people what that is about?
Well, same thing. Defunding and demilitarizing the police. It is conceptually wise. It is about taking money away from it, but it's about removing the money that is like they had I can't remember the exact magazine. But they had a magazine that just put an article out where they have like a list of cities where their crime rate was going down over the past, I want to say 5 to 10 years or so. And as the crime rate was going down, you could see that the police budget was being increased and that they were still, spending more money towards things like assault rifles and, heavy bulletproof vehicles, just things, extensive things that each city doesn't need. Even things when you just think about how much money gets spent on like tear gas masks and tear gas. The only reason that the police have tear gas masks is for their own tear gas. It's not like people are going out and tear gassing police officers. Mm-hmm. So even the amount of money, if you thought about global, nationwide, the amount of money that just strictly is for tear gas and tear gas masks, and what you could then do to allocate those funds to different areas. Depending on what community you live in, you could very well be decreasing the crime rate by defunding the police and taking specific money that's being put into the police system and reallocating that towards health systems, or reallocating that towards like some educational systems, reallocating that towards extracurricular activities and extracurricular things. Same thing even with social workers and things like that. So a lot of these concepts, even though they're newer concepts, it's been things people have been talking about for years. They just haven't been at the forefront of society or at the forefront of media. So, and like, not to say I'm an expert in defunding or demilitarizing it, and it looks different in each community. It'll look different in each city, but it is something that I think people should take the time to look into, because it is a lot of different studies that show that it's positive impacts that come from it.
I saw another group. I can't think of their name right now, but they did something else. Like, is there some type of disagreements and what y'all want to do? That's why they did not come and join R.Y.A. Or you just like, all right, they just gonna do their own thing and they just got a different message or a different agenda that they want?
I think the one that specifically that happened on Sunday, I think the guy who put that one together, he had came to a couple of different R.Y.A. events, and I think that he just had a different outlook and a different goal set than the organization had as a whole. So that's sort of why he went and did his own thing. But he was never really a part of the organization. He just sort of same thing. He just came as a participant in the community. I think that it's very important and I think it's probably, because I didn't know, not to say that I was very well versed in some of these things before I got into it, but one of the things that people should understand is that in each one of these cities and each one of these communities, it's a different relationship that people have with the police officers and a different relationship that people have with city officials. And so though you might see people, doing all these different protests in all these cities, and you think, oh, hey, I want to put together a protest, there is aftermath effects from protests if the protests go left. There are there are a whole long history and line of people who have put together, who doing activist things or doing activism, who have ended up being, you know, harassed by police or been harassed by somebody who disagree with their views, or being assaulted by police or assaulted by someone who disagrees with their views. So I think it's important when people are putting these things together that they go into it with the understanding of the seriousness of it, and they go into it with the understanding that you should be doing this to try to format some kind of genuine change. I know that a lot of people don't understand our concept of not speaking to the police directly or speaking to city officials directly, but part of the reason for that is building leverage, and it's showing leverage, and it's showing that this isn't like we did it just for a couple of days just to sit there with the city officials or sit with the mayor and then have a press conference and then pretend like these issues aren't really happening. And that's what happens if you just do a protest for one day in a month, or if you just do a protest because everybody else is doing a protest and you don't have a real end goal that you're getting to. All it ends up being is a photo op for whoever else is a politician or whoever is in, you know, the police system that can try to be like, okay, we appease these people, we listen to what they wanted to hear, we don't want to hear about this no more. So it's important that before you go to sit at a table with some of these people, that you get the whole community behind you and that you get the full strength of the people backing behind you. So that way when you're sitting at the table, they can understand the power that really is in the streets. They can understand the voices that really is in the streets. And they're not just sitting at a table with one person who pretending to be a representative of all of these other people.
Mm-hmm. Like, do you have anybody that's on the inside that can actually get stuff done?
I mean, it wouldn't be difficult right now to reach out to somebody specifically in the city, specifically any city officials, just because of the notoriety that all of this has. But I think that the main thing right now is we're still trying to get families of certain victims to come out. Like, we still want families of people who've experienced some of these things to come out. So we don't want to co-opt this and then take this safe zone and just give it away from people. It's people who haven't felt comfortable yet to come out and speak their story, you know. So it would be doing them a disservice and doing them a disjustice if all of a sudden we're shaking hands with the mayor, all of a sudden we're walking with the police officers, and we haven't really given the community a chance to come out and tell their story.
So you're saying it's like people that's been like brutalized by the police, but they not.
Yeah, because you know they don't know what this is yet. You know, it's something that's new. You know, everybody doesn't. You know, you know how things work. You hear about something here and there. You haven't been to it. Maybe you haven't been at work. So it's not like somebody who got set up for something or got, you know, a case pinned on them that wasn't really his is going to all of a sudden try to run to this group of people who just came up and popped up 3 weeks ago when all of these protests were going on around the world. You know, you're going to wait to see what it is that they're about. So that's what I mean when I say it would just be doing a disservice to those people if 3 weeks into what we was doing, 4 weeks in, even 2 months into it, we was going and sitting down with these same people that they got these bad stories of and they got these traumas from.
Mm-hmm. Is it true that y'all was, or some protesters was telling that they didn't want the media there?
No, it's organizationally. That's why one of the things that, specifically when I do go out and talk, I do try to make sure that I'm saying I'm the spokesperson, or I'm saying that I'm speaking on behalf, but not as the full representative of. It's not an absolute thing, because there are people in the organization who don't trust the media, you know, because the media has a bad record as far as things like this are concerned. You know, even when you go back to the first week, a lot of media coverage was more on the rioting and the looting than was on the actual issues. Even on the 30th, I would say that most of the media coverage in Rockford wasn't on the actual issues. It wasn't taking time to do research about people who have been victimized by police officers in Rockford. It was more about the rioting and looting. So me personally, I'm trying to do what I can to try to be a bridge between the media and the organization, between people, maybe city officials or people with different views in the organization, but it is still a very strong distrust and a very strong hesitancy for the organization as a whole to engage with the media or engage with city officials or engage even with things like the NAACP, who, as far back as you can look, you know, it's black activists and black people speaking out against some of the double standards that NAACP have, against some of the hierarchy that the NAACP has when it comes to just black people in general.
What is the end goal for all of this? Once it's all said and done, what are you wanting to happen? What type of change do you want to see? How long will you actually keep this going?
Right. I think that I think it's sort of like different steps for each one of those, you know, questions that you ask. It's like a different step for each answer. I think one of the main things that I hope, not just in our community, in our city, but in black communities and in cities everywhere where they have a populace of black people who have the amount of people where they can assemble, or they just have people who understand some of these black issues and can assemble, is that we have to start holding the police and the city accountable for some of the things that they do. And we've gotten to the point now where legislation won't do that. We've gotten to the point now where policies won't do that. So we have to start doing that as a community, and they have to understand that if someone gets assaulted by the police, or if someone is killed by the police, it won't take a week for people to assemble and be outside protesting or be outside somewhere causing disruptive action. It won't take 4 days, it won't take 3 days. Within 12 to 24 hours, they'll be at that spot, they'll be at those public places, and they'll be ready to assemble and make their voices be heard. And that's going to be the only way to make sure when things like what happened to George Floyd happens, that someone gets arrested. Because if it isn't that pressure put onto these city officials, if it isn't that pressure put onto people in the media to keep the story relevant, if that leverage isn't asserted, then they'll let it go to the back. They'll let Ahmaud Arbery go 2 months before they do anything about pressing charges until the video comes out. They'll let things like Breonna Taylor go however long until black people make it a big thing on with media coverage, or until some kind of big story breaks about it. So we have to get to a point where we understand that the only way to hold these people as accountable is for us to be able to move and assemble as a community within a short period of time when some of these injustices happen. So I think that one of the end goals for this is to put together and to have a structure and a collective of people that's at the minimum will be able to disrupt and stop anything that's going on, whether it's somebody of color or even if it's somebody of not color that has some kind of systemic issue that happens to them, or some kind of systemic oppression is happening to them, and they feel like they have a place that they can go to, or organization that they can go to that'll speak on behalf of them and not be trying to appease or not be trying to pander and not be looking for a photo op.
So pretty much it's just going to just keep going till something get done.
You keep doing it. The same thing with the back in the day with SE, the SELC and SNCC and NAACP, how all those organizations started is you fight whatever it is that brings you together that starts the moment. You keep the moment going, but then you start a movement. So that way it's structured for everybody, because you never know when it's your kid, or when it's your cousin's kid, or when it's your friend's kid, or you. And you wish that you had something that was already there, instead of everybody trying to scramble and get numbers together and get a time together, and where we gonna meet at, and how we march when we do march, what we do if they interrupt the march. So it's people who've been to these things over and over again, who know how to move once we go into the streets, who know what their rights is as a protester, who know what public spaces we can be on, who know what to do if somebody come in and they trying to agitate the crowd or trying to cause some kind of something opposite from our goal being accomplished. So I think that it's an importance in doing things like this regularly, and I think that as a people and as a community, we've forgotten some of the things that we did to get some of the rights that we have, and to get to some of the justices that we have, and to get some of the legislation that we had. And one of the things that they knew was that when something went wrong or if something went left, if the right black people got word of it, they'd be able to assemble quickly. And all the media coverage and all the media in the world and everybody's opinions in the world will be down on that city and will be down on that town. That's why people know Selma and Birmingham. There's no basketball teams or no football teams there. It's because something happened there, and then the full force of a movement came to that place.
For people that want to help, that can't come out there in March, who do they contact you? How can somebody help if they're not on the front line?
I think specifically because it's 2020 is different forms of the front lines, and this is something that even I've slowly started to learn. And specifically, I tell people, if you can't be out there marching, then go make sure you're on the page and you look at the comments underneath some of the boycott Murphy's picture and the boycott R.Y.A's pictures, and you see the comments that these people is leaving, and you stop going to some of these establishments. A lot of these places that have some of these stigmas around them and some of these stereotype things, like these people who own these places are involved with city officials. Like, I'm not gonna go, it's a whole web to go into, but like, as you get into the minutia of all these things, you see that these things are very systemic issues, and you giving $1 here is feeding something else over there. So you don't have to be out there at the front lines protesting each time. When you see somebody leave a crazy comment, say something back to them and let people know who it is. When you see somebody say something racist or prejudiced on their Facebook page, take a screenshot and put that picture up there and show it so everybody know how this person giving it up. Same thing when you see that people are constantly telling you that an establishment is prejudiced towards black people, or prejudiced towards women, or prejudiced towards minorities, or whatever it is that they're doing. Stop giving your dollar to them, because All of these things feed each other. Once those first couple of places realize, oh, we can't be like this no more. Oh, people not coming to our establishment no more. Then all the other places who do it more behind closed doors, who maybe you don't hear about it as much, they'll clean up house. You know what I'm saying? And that's how it's got to work. So it's different ways of being on the front line, because just as important as it is to be out there with a sign, causing disruptive action and bringing your voice out to these people, it's just as important to withhold your dollar from them and to take away the economic support.
Has anybody from like R.Y.A, I know you've been calling for a boycott and stuff like that. Has anybody said anything, like the owners, that they reached out to you, or they just silent still?
Nope, I haven't heard anything
they
from the
haven't
owners.
even tried to like rebuttal it, like no, you're not
nothing that I've seen. I haven't seen no statements or anything like that, and I've been looking for them here and there. But I think that same thing, like a lot of these things, they're tied into city issues too. That's one of the reasons that at Murphy's was the only place that we went to that whole weekend that had any kind of people with riot gear. And it's because they
had riot gear
at Murphy's, yeah. But that's because the owner of Murphy's, either his father is on the city council or the city board or something like that, or he's on the city council or city board. I don't want to, speak out of turn, but it is something systemically in the city that he was able to use nepotism to make sure that he was, surrounded and had riot gear, which, like I said, I think that comes out of white guilt. Like, he knows that what the stigma is around where he is, Murphy's. He knows that people think Murphy's stereotype people, and people think that Murphy's is racist. So in fear that he thought somebody was going to burn down his store is going to get rioted or looted based off of actions of the store, is why he had those people out there, and that's why Walmart didn't have no people out there, because Walmart ain't everybody in Rockford ain't walking around talking about, oh, they stereotype me at Walmart, or they won't let me in the door at Walmart, you know what I'm saying? But Murphy's had that because they know that that's what people say about them, so they was nervous about them roosters coming home.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you letting me have this conversation.
It's all good, man.
Caught it.
Time.
You said what?
Caught it?
No, I'm not done. I got to do an outro.
Oh,
damn, you just fucked it up.
I thought you wanted to do an outro outside or something.
Can I at least end it?
Go ahead.
Well, shit, it's too
Hey,
late now.
no.
Damn,
You cut. You know how to edit.